Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Spotlight. I'm your host, Cynthia Martin, and we are here and we're sponsored by yourauthorhub.com. We are those who love books. We're avid readers. We love to talk to authors. We love to talk about their projects. We love to talk about the writing process. And so we want to invite you today to visit with us as we visit with Dr. Agitu Wodajo. And she is an author. She's an amazing woman who's done so much for the kingdom, and she has so much information and so many degrees. I just over and over again want to tell you, you're going to love this interview today. Dr. Agitu, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your book that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I was born in a small rural town in western Ethiopia. In the 1960s, girls' education was not favored in Ethiopia, and the estimated illiteracy rate was 95%. But my father purchased a property adjacent to the Swedish mission school and church, and I was able to start school a month before I turned 6, and God got me here from there, from that type of background, and the story of my early life is very different from that of a girl coming of age in the 1960s in America. I fetched water from the stream closest to my parents' house. I collected firewood and carried to our home because we didn't have electricity, and I had to travel uh, by mule and on foot 85 kilometers by mule back and on foot to attend high school, and then now God allowed me to get here from there.
Wow. And
And
so
and
you have,
what I want to add is also, it's all but for a purpose. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." God created me for a purpose, and He equipped me with all that I needed, including the multiple degrees I hold, to fulfill that purpose and write this book.
yeah. And the scripture Ephesians 2:10, that we're created to do good works. We're his workmanship. He knew exactly what he needed, and so he created us. And I'm so thankful that he created you, and that you're here today to share the mission for which God created you. So you grew up in a totally different culture, without all of the great things that we have here in America that so much of the time we take for granted. And yet God put so many things in you. And I understand that you came from there to the United States, and you got here because how did you decide to come to the United States?
It is not actually my decision, but it is God's plan for me. And
Mhm.
how I got here is uh, I had a very difficult marriage, and the tribulations I endured above in my marriage, my career life, my marriage life was so bad, and especially how I got here is with that kind of marriage that went beyond the physical, psychological abuse. The adultery I tolerated was outside the regular adultery. And then I prayed what the end of this marriage will be. And God spoke to me that I will be moving to the United States, and how this is how I got here.
Wow. Um, One of the things I want to bring out of what you just said is that when I ask you, how did you get here? You said it wasn't your plan, it was God's plan. I think it's so important that we recognize that when we follow the Lord, we just follow his plan. We get up every day and we're faithful to be uh, the servant of him and do what he puts in front of us to do. And it's amazing how the doors open before us as we do that. And it sounds like that's what's happened throughout your life, is that the favor of God has been upon your life and has opened doors for you. Would you say that's true? And could you give us some examples of how that's happened?
Yeah, God's favor was with me because he had a purpose for me, and he created me with a purpose. And he equipped me, like I mentioned before, with all I needed to fulfill that purpose. And the purpose led me to serve others, to help, to serve those in need.
Mhm. And so,
Right now, I started with a nonprofit NGO that empowered immigrant women, and I'm sorry, an NGO that helped this underprivileged women in Ethiopia to become self-sufficient and bring change to the quality of their family lives and their community. And I now continue to serve God through my writing, and also the nonprofit organization that he had me start. After the nonprofit, I started. I'm sorry about that. So
it's okay. So
yeah,
you traveled through several countries. Is that correct? How did you get involved with traveling through different countries and here to the United States?
the
What were you teaching?
the traveling was the nonprofit. The NGO I started in Ethiopia became a best practice model for the United Nations and even for the U.S. Embassy in Addis Ababa. And that opened the door for me to visit so many countries in the world. A high-ranking UN official visited my organization when its early stage, and she recommended that I visit Niger, Niamey, Ministry of Women's Affairs and Social Promotion in Niger, Niamey. And that that was my first tour, and then that opened a door for me to lobby the new government of Ethiopia to establish the Ministry of Women's Affairs and Social Promotion in Ethiopia. And it was created, the Ministry of Women's Affairs and Social Promotion was created through that. And then I traveled to so many other countries for study tour, conferences, and the like. And after I came to the United States, also my traveling was through my the most traveling was through my for academic purpose, like China, the entire China, a 1 month tour of China. So that's it.
Wow. I'm not sure if you caught what she said at the very beginning because I almost missed it. And she said there was a someone from the UN visited her very early and opened the doors for her. And as we've kind of alluded to, all we have to do is follow after the Lord and do our business, and God brings in the favor. How amazing. And then she went and she ended up influencing her own country. And then I know because I've talked to Dr. Agitu about Wodajo, so Dr. Wodajo, about her history, and tell us a little bit about you. Even spoke before the U.S. Congress. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, here in Minnesota. After I moved to Minnesota, I started a nonprofit organization that helped immigrant women from so many countries in different ways. And the services that this nonprofit I started uh, includes empowering women through services that build self-sufficiency and policy change advocacy that lift barriers. So how I suppose the policy change includes change in the nursing licensing policy for foreign qualified nurses. It was very difficult. You have to read about that. So I threw a bill, the bill that I helped formulate, and also joined in the formulation, and also testified at the Senate hearing. The nursing licensing policy has been changed again through my advocacy work on head braiders, head braiders. The hair braiders in Minnesota are exempt from cosmetology licensing.
Wow, Dr. Wodajo, so you've helped establish and change some policies here in the United States, and also had some influence in changing some things because of your work in Ethiopia, correct?
Yes, in Ethiopia, yeah, call me by my first name. It is easier, Agitu, and it's
Okay.
a traditional way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So
um, Agitu, so tell me a little bit about that process. You worked also to get some things changed there in your home country. Tell a little bit about that, and then we'll go back to talking about your book. I think it's so important that people see all of what God has put in you, and so tell us a little bit about that.
in Ethiopia, after I visited the Ministry of Women's Affairs and Social Promotion in Niger, I lobbied the new government of Ethiopia to establish the Ministry of Women's Affairs and Social Promotion. So I am one of the 15 women who drafted the national policy on Ethiopian women after the Ministry of Women's Affairs was established, which is a big deal. It's
Yeah.
like the situation for women is almost like here in America. Like, for example, marriage is no fault. Previously, before this Ministry of Women's Affairs was established, like, for example, if women are assaulted and part of their body was like, if the arm broke, it's the husband who will be compensated, and they didn't have the title to inheritance. So all this changed, and also in marriage, if a woman files a lawsuit that her husband committed adultery, and they said, "Did you see them like thread and needle?" So right now, everything has changed because of the creation of the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Ethiopia.
Wow, thank you for your work with women and here and in Ethiopia. And I know that the Lord honors and loves women. And so I appreciate all the work that you've done in that area. I want to talk a little bit about your book. It's called A Purposeful Life. I know that you've written other books, but we're talking about your book today, A Purposeful Life. And that's a memoir of your life. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about the content of what that book contains.
Yeah, let me begin with this. Writing this book is the assignment that was given to me from God. And the call, it's a call from God for me that came to me through two evangelists who watched my life going through difficulties in my marriage and career life. And they encouraged me, telling me that I am a gospel. I didn't see, I say I'm a gospel in the book, in my book though. I'm a gospel, and my life example can touch many lives and make a positive difference in many others. So, but it took me long to listen to this call and start writing. So finally, I got a very humiliating, painful wake-up call, which I broadly wrote in chapter 9 of my book under a title, The Second Refining Journey. And the first book, the first book I started is titled The Secret to Finishing Well, Quest for Authentic Leadership. And then it took me another couple of years to start my memo. And
So
the book is
go ahead.
The Purposeful Life, the Secret to Finishing Well, Quest for Authentic Leadership is the leadership problems in Ethiopia, and which also involved the difficulties I faced in the woke-up call problem. The woke-up problem, which I call the woke-up call. But the purposeful life is about my story, my marriage, my growing up. It's the whole story of me and the work I did and how I worked with God and all this.
Yeah. Very inspirational for women and for all people, really. And, you know, you're not cutting any punches and saying that you had this marvelous life and it was all wonderful. And you're showing us about trusting God and hearing from God and following after God and all the different things. I appreciate your chapter. I think you mentioned it was chapter 9, you know, the second refining journey. And that brings out the truth that we all have to be refined. And sometimes we think we've gone through most of it, and then God shows us another layer that has to be dealt with. So I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability and your openness, authenticity to share that with us and with the readers in your book. So I so appreciate that. So, Agitu, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? And I know that you have a nonprofit that you're helping a lot of people that are dealing with social issues. So tell us a little bit about that and what the path that God has you on now.
Yeah, what I'm doing is continuing with what I started, like serving others through a nonprofit that he had me start and continue writing. So like to write a purposeful life is just for a purpose of showing others. I mean, I take myself as an experiment in when it comes to marriage, child rearing, and career and all those. So I carry that story in the book that I already wrote. And again, I continue to carry that in the new book. The second book I'm writing is titled How to Build Healthy Marriage and Families, Prevention and Cure. I went through it all. I have experienced how the effect of culture and religion on women. God helped me to endure the unendurable. And now I know when actually one of the chapters in my new book titled uh, How to Build Healthy Marriage and Families, Prevention and Cure, is know when enough is enough. One chapter. So I went through it all. So I continue through my the work I did through my nonprofit and through my writings.
It's important, I think, that we see, especially Christian women, that to realize that there is an end sometimes. And I appreciate you sharing the value of knowing and following the Lord and listening to His voice and following the scriptures. Also, very intrigued about the book that isn't out yet, and we'll just throw that out there as a little hint that it's coming, about growing healthy families. That's something to look forward to. But your memoirs itself is called A Purposeful Life, and I want to make sure we say this, that it's available on Amazon, and you can go right over to amazon.com and just type in A Purposeful Life and it comes right up, and you should be able to grab that book. I think it would be very inspiring, especially for women, but I imagine all the other people would find it very intriguing, especially with all of her experience and all of her education and all of the wonderful things that she's doing. You just can't really talk about all of them on a interview or a podcast or a video cast like we're trying to get in today. So I want to encourage you to go over there and grab that book. So let's talk a little bit about, the writing process for you and the creative process for you? I know you've said that God has told you to write these things, and so how did you, do you carve out time during the day? What when he tells you to write, you just sit down and write? How does that work?
Just I try to balance my time between doing my other work, and also I did my PhD just 3 years ago. I graduated 3 years ago. So I just balance my time and write. But a little challenge I had in writing it is like I was trying to, I felt that it would be boring if it's just a biography. So
Right.
I struggled a lot to make it look like right to read as a novel.
Yeah. I think that's a struggle that all authors run into, is how to tell the story, especially when it's a biography, that it isn't just fact upon fact upon fact upon fact. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. There's an interesting story that I thought was incredibly interesting that I know about you. Back when you were in Minneapolis, and about getting your visas. And so talk a little bit about that, because I was just fascinating how that opened for you.
Yeah, chapter 1 of my book is titled My Humble Beginning. And my settlement in South Minneapolis is also, that chapter is also titled My Second Humble Beginning. So when God spoke to me what the end of this marriage will be, which is moving to the United States, I kind of helped God to find a scholarship. So I got a family scholarship from Moody Bible Institute in Chicago to pursue nursing, continue with my nursing career, to take it to the second level. And then I got invited to my sister's wedding, and how that even happened was when I traveled to, how it happened for me to settle in Minneapolis. Let me add that one, because
Okay.
it's very important for me.
Yeah.
So I was on a study tour in Central America, which was organized by the United Nations Development Fund. And on my way, I went to visit my sister in Minneapolis, and she brought me this American lady, one American lady who was a peaceful volunteer 26 years before I met her. And she was going back to Ethiopia, and she asked me to help her when she comes to Ethiopia. So I went back to Ethiopia 5 days before she arrived, because I was working with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in Addis Ababa. I had the opportunity to go up to the gate of the plane and collect her, and then she stayed at our house. We gave her our master bedroom with private bath, so she doesn't share with bathroom with my children. And when she came back, after she came back to the United States, this wedding came up. My 6 months after and then we were invited for the wedding. And the U.S. Embassy was one of my donors too, and they knew my background, and they gave visa to all my children. Actually, I didn't want the visa for the rest of my children, only those children who had involvement in the wedding as a flower girl and ring bearer. But the embassy gave, the consular gave a visa to the 5. I didn't think that they were giving. Then we ended up in Minneapolis, and this was just 4 months before I was about to go to join the Moody Bible Institute. So we switched gear, and because it was the will of God for me to settle in there, and also my career should be proceeding with helping women. So I enrolled at Metro State University to pursue human services nonprofit administration. And when we settled, it was like, I'm sorry if I'm mixing up, but
No, it's okay.
it was very humbling, a very humbling situation. moving from a wealthy neighborhood in Addis Ababa to a very rough neighborhood in South Minneapolis. We owned a villa residence made of bricks. We had cars, we had all those, but settling there, we didn't have anything. So, but because God said it, we overcame all that, and my children also adjusted very well, and they are very successful now. And they throughout up to high school, they received a presidential award. They are well achieved, and now they are in the sixth digit. And also because I raised them in a godly way, they are spiritually doing well. Their maintaining their Christian values also, and their career.
Wow. So you said so much in that. I just want to review it because I think it's so important that we stop on those incredible points. The U.S. government gave you visas for children that you didn't even ask for. I mean, they're your children. You asked for them, but the visas for them. So I think it's so important that that's such a indicator that God is showing you in which direction to go, which He'd already told you. And so then you mentioned that it was, some of the places that where you landed was in a very bad, humble circumstances. But because God said, I really appreciate that you're bringing that out because God said, because we don't want to act in presumption. What we want to do what God said. So again, you're tying it back to what God's word is and what He's called you to do. And He keeps opening doors before you, one after the other, and you're getting into very influential places and collecting information and education and all kinds of degrees. And you've ended up, I mean, that's such a very quick flyover of your life, but to bring it up to the point of where you are now, that you have a nonprofit that you're helping other people with nonprofits do an extension of all the things that you've already done. Is that correct?
Yes. This nonprofit, this last nonprofit is titled Holistic Freedom International, Inc. And the website is holisticfreedom.org. It helps churches to build their capacity, both financial and human, to serve others, to do social service and all the services that are needed in our neighborhoods. And what we do is the nonprofit bridge the gap, because churches think that they will not get grants because there is no funding for religious purpose. This is not a religious purpose. This is practicing, exercising our religion. So because faith without corresponding action is dead. So this nonprofit bridge that gap by partnering with churches. The churches have the manpower, the facilities, the passion, the skills, the knowledge. And this nonprofit has the experience to solicit grants for government, including government grants, designing programs, and managing the grants. So we partner. These nonprofits solicits the funding, manage the funding, designs the programs, does evaluation, and does all that. But the church do the job. We partner using their facility, using their skills, and their passion to serve the community.
Wow. So we as ministers, I'm actually an ordained minister, and I am a co-leader of a local group, a local church body, and we spend so much time, and not so much time, but our passion is to serve the Lord and to study and to teach and to love people and to help the broken. And that's a full-time job. And so the idea of being able to come to someone and Holistic Freedom Institute or holisticfreedom.org and partner with you, who has the experience, the education, and the know-how to get the grants and the funding needed so that we can do our work. What a great combination. What a great partnership that's available through the wonderful work that you're doing, and a wonderful testimony of your life, of how God can take something so that has started in such humble circumstances, and having to carry firewood and walk long distance to go to school, and then get brought here to the United States, and living in those really humble circumstances there in Minnesota. And then through all of that, you gained education and experience and travel and knowledge and the know-how to manage the funds, because if you get a grant, you still have to manage it in order to be able to get it again. And so I so appreciate, your heart to be a servant, and your heart to do what God, those good works that you started the conversation with, the good works that God has laid out for you to do from the beginning. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Agitu, tell us, as we're about out of time, tell us what else you would like us to know, other than you need to go over to Amazon and get her book, A Purposeful Life. It's on Amazon, and you can get it over there very easily. What else can you tell us, as we're out of time, but I just hate to close down the interview. What else would we need to share with her?
Just one word. The sales from this book goes to this nonprofit. Those who buy my book are not giving me money, but they are in the ministry by buying my book. So
Okay.
all the finances, all the proceeds go to this nonprofit organization.
Okay. So you're going to continue to support the work that she's doing, and it's fabulous work. And I so applaud her, and I so, lift my hat, and I honor her for her sacrifices and for her diligence and her obedience to the Lord, to do, as she has said over and over again, God's plan for her life. She followed him through, what he created her to do. And so I so appreciate that. You need to go over to Amazon and get her book, A Purposeful Life, and watch for her other book that's coming out about healthy families. So today we're out of time, but I hope you've enjoyed listening, as I've enjoyed as much as I've enjoyed talking today and learning about just kind of blows your minds, the favor that this woman of God has walked under, and all out of obedience, obeying what God has called her to do and what she's heard him say. So we want to thank our sponsor today. We want to thank yourauthorhub.com for making this happen. And so we want to bless her today and tell her to go forward and do all the things that God has called her to do, because that enriches our lives as women and as citizens of the United States. So we bless you all. We bless Agitu, sorry, and Dr. Wodajo. That's easier for me, actually, and to go forth and do great things. And so thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the Author Spotlight.